Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, a novel as beautiful as it is, well, scandalous.
Definitely scandalous. It still packs a punch today.
Absolutely. And our mission isn't just to, summarize the plot. We want to peel back the layers of its creation, its reception.
Right, using insights from this Penguin Classics edition specifically. It's got some great context.
Exactly. You might think you know this story, but we're going to uncover some truly surprising facts about why this book caused such a massive fuss, what Wilde really intended, and how its powerful themes still sort of echo in our world today.
They really do. And to understand its impact, you got to go back to the beginning. Surprisingly, it all started with a dinner party.
A dinner party that, frankly, changed literature. Can you imagine? Oscar Wilde, Arthur Conan Doyle, both sitting there?
Commissioned by the same American publisher, J.M. Stoddart, for Lippincott's monthly magazine.
Right, and Conan Doyle gives them the sign of four, a solid, perfectly moral detective tale.
Safe bet.
Totally. Wilde, though, he delivers the Picture of Dorian Gray, and then he has the audacity to claim it was upon a high moral plane.
Which is just fascinating, given what happened next. That claim was challenged almost immediately.
Oh, instantly. When it first came out, July 1890, it just ignited this firestorm of moral outrage. The reviews weren't just bad, they were vicious.
Vicious is putting it mildly. One called it discreditable alike to author and editor.
Yeah, but the most cutting one, the one that really landed low, suggested Wilde should write for none but outlawed noblemen and perverted telegraph boys.
Oof. And for Victorian audience, that wasn't just name-calling.
No way. It was a direct hit. A clear reference to that huge Cleveland Street brothel scandal involving homosexual prostitutes or telegraph boys.
Right. It explicitly linked Wilde's novel, his art, to what they called disgusting sins and abominable crimes. A very public, very personal attack.
So you can see the kind of pressure he was under.
Immense pressure. And despite his public front, claiming he couldn't understand how they can treat Dorian Gray as immoral.
He still defended it, right? Said it had a strong ethical lesson inherent in it.
He did. He defended it fiercely. But clearly, the controversy got to him.
It must have. Because for the 1891 book edition, the version most people read now, he did some significant, self-censorship is the term used.
That's right.
So what did he actually change? And why do those specific changes matter so much?
That's a great question. He made several really key revisions. For instance, Basil Hallward's intense feelings for Dorian. Initially, it was described pretty openly as worship, even love.
Didn't Basil say Dorian was the one person that makes life absolutely lovely to me?
Exactly that phrase. But in the revised version, that was toned down considerably. Basil's devotion became much more about art.
Ah, okay.
Dorian became the one person who gives my art whatever charm it possesses. My life as an artist depends on him. See the shift?
Yeah, it's much safer. Less personal, more professional, almost.
Precisely. He also softened descriptions like poisonous beauty. And very tellingly, he changed a reference to the French school of decadence to symbolists.
Why is that distinction important? Decadence versus symbolists?
Well, decadence carried heavy implications of moral decay, excess, almost like a sickness. It played right into the hands of his critics. Symbolists, though,
Was more acceptable.
it was seen as a more neutral term, focusing purely on artistic style, suggestion, and mood, rather than overt moral transgression. It neatly sidestepped the accusation.
So these changes really show him trying to navigate or maybe deflect that moral panic.
Absolutely. Protecting the work and maybe protecting himself, too.
Which brings us to Wilde's whole philosophy of art, doesn't it? You almost need to understand that to get the novel. It's all laid out in that famous preface.
You really do. He declares the artist is the creator of beautiful things. Simple enough.
But then the bombshells. There is no single thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written, that is all.
Radical stuff for the time. And then, perhaps the most famous line, all art is quite useless.
Which sounds dismissive, but it wasn't meant that way, was it?
Not at all. It was defiant. He was pushing back against that very strict Victorian idea that art had to teach a moral lesson, had to be useful in some didactic way.
He believed art just existed for its own sake, for beauty.
Exactly, for beauty. And he argued that it is the spectator and not life that art really mirrors.
Which kind of flips things, doesn't it? Instead of art reflecting the world, it reflects us looking at it.
Precisely. Our own interpretations, our own biases, maybe even our own sins.
And connecting this back to Wilde himself, The novel was widely seen as reflecting his own life, wasn't it? That idea of a double life.
Oh, definitely. The introduction mentions it was seen as presenting in oblique form an image of the double life which Wilde himself was leading.
Right. Rumors were flying about his clandestine life. He was apparently getting snubbed in public places.
And you see that same social discomfort mirrored in Dorian's own experience within the novel, don't you? As the rumors about him spread.
Yeah, you do. It's quite striking.
It really taps into this peculiar Victorian anxiety, whereas the source notes, art and scandal came to be associated. This idea that the imagination, the artistic life, was somehow drawn to vice.
So the novel itself becomes a kind of commentary on how we read things, how we interpret art and connect it to life, or scandal. An allegory of interpretation, as the intro puts it.
Exactly. It's a puzzle about how art, morality, and public image all get tangled up.
Okay, so we've got the context, the outrage, the philosophy. How does this all actually play out in the story? Let's talk about the portrait itself.
The absolute core of the novel.
That central conceit. Dorian's desperate wish, made right there in Basil Hallward's studio. He wishes the painting would age and show the marks of sin, while he stays young and beautiful forever.
Bear the burden of his passions and his sins, while he keeps the unsullied splendor of eternal youth. Such a powerful Faustian bargain.
And the first sign that it's actually worked? It's subtle, isn't it?
Chillingly subtle.
Yeah.
After he cruelly dismisses Sybil Vane, the actress,
Right.
he looks at the portrait and sees just a tiny change, a touch of cruelty in the mouth.
And he recognizes it immediately as the visible emblem of conscience.
That tiny shift, that's the moment everything changes. It's the first physical manifestation of his decaying soul.
And it's horrifying how quickly it escalates from there. He doesn't recoil in horror, not entirely. He becomes fascinated.
Obsessed even.
Yeah.
More and more enamored of his own beauty, more and more interested in the corruption of his own soul.
He starts examining it with minute care, the text says, and sometimes with a monstrous and terrible delight, looking at the hideous lines forming on the canvas.
While his own face remains untouched.
Exactly, and he hides the portrait away, locks it up, and over the years it just transforms into something monstrous. Bestial, sodden, and unclean.
A frightful picture, worse, Wilde writes, than the rotting of a corpse in a watery grave. It's incredibly Gothic imagery.
It really is. But what's powerful, as you said, is how it literalizes that common Victorian idea.
Right, that belief that sin is a thing that writes itself across a man's face. It cannot be concealed.
The ultimate irony being that it is concealed from the world, only visible on the canvas, which completely fools people like Basil.
Basil, who holds that belief so strongly, he can't reconcile the beautiful man before him with the rumors he hears, precisely because Dorian's face doesn't show the sin.
That's a crucial point. And speaking of Basil, let's maybe pivot to the characters themselves, starting with the architect of Dorian's downfall, Lord Henry Wotton.
Lord Henry, the cynical charmer. His philosophy is just electric and dangerous.
Especially his ideas on influence. He argues all influence is immoral. Why? Because to influence a person is to give him one's own soul.
He basically says you lose your own identity when you adopt someone else's ideas. And he proclaims the aim of life is self-development. To realize one's nature perfectly, that is what each of us is here for.
Which sounds okay on the surface, but then comes the twist.
The famous line, the only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it. That's his core message to Dorian. Experience everything. Consequences be damned.
And his wit, it just cuts through everything, full of paradoxes, like being natural is simply a pose, and the most irritating pose I know.
He delights in those inversions. He finds laughter. Far the best ending for friendship. Or his rules for choosing associates. I choose my friends for their good looks, my acquaintances for their good characters, and my enemies for their good intellects.
It's brilliantly cynical. He sees marriage as just a setup for deception. He really enjoys poking holes in conventional morality.
And he applies that cynicism even to real tragedy. Look at how he handles Sybil Vane's death.
Yeah, that's cold. He tells Dorian to see it simply as a strange, lurid fragment from some Jacobean tragedy. Basically, treat it like fiction.
He even says the girl never really lived, and so she never really died, which the introduction suggests aligns with Wilde's own intent to force an aesthetic rather than sentimental response from the reader, to view her almost as an artistic construct.
Wow. That's quite a perspective. And Lord Henry is pushing this whole philosophy he calls the new hedonism.
Right, a philosophy designed to recreate life, to save it from what he sees as harsh, uncomely Puritanism.
So it's about pursuing pleasure.
But more than that, It's about prioritizing experience itself and not the fruits of experience, divorcing actions from their outcomes, their moral weight, which is, of course, exactly what Dorian needed to hear.
The perfect poison. Now, contrasting Lord Henry, you have Basil Hallward, the artist.
The moral compass, you could say, and ultimately the victim. His devotion to Dorian, at least initially, is purely artistic.
Right. In the revised version, it's the one person who gives my art whatever charm it possesses. My life as an artist depends on him.
And he genuinely cares for Dorian's soul. He warns Lord Henry early on, don't spoil him. He sees the danger.
And he holds on to that belief we talked about. Sin is a thing that writes itself across a man's face.
Yes, that deep conviction, which, ironically, blinds him for so long. He hears the terrible rumors about Dorian, but he looks at that perfect face and just can't believe them. The evidence of his eyes contradicts the whispers.
Until that final, dreadful confrontation.
When Basil finally insists, he wants to see Dorian's soul. He says something like, only God can see the soul.
And Dorian's reply is terrifying. You shall see it yourself tonight. Then he shows him the portrait.
Yeah. And that revelation, that confrontation with the true horror of Dorian's soul made visible, leads directly to Basil's murder. A really tragic end for the moral center of the book.
And then there's Dorian himself. He starts off so innocent, doesn't he? A brainless, beautiful creature, as Lord Henry calls him. A narcissus.
Almost a blank canvas, waiting to be painted upon by Lord Henry's ideas, and he fully embraces that life of unbridled indulgence and pleasure.
But it's not just simple pleasure-seeking, is it? He tries to elaborate some new scheme of life, to spiritualize the senses. What does that actually mean?
It means taking sensory experiences, the beauty of jewels, exotic perfumes, rich textiles, music, even religious vestments, and trying to elevate them into something profound, almost intellectual or spiritual.
Seeking meaning in sensation itself, rather than morality?
Exactly. He collects all these exquisite things, not just for pleasure, but as distractions, as means of forgetfulness, ways to escape the fear the decaying portrait represents.
And all the while, he's living this double life.
Absolutely. Outwardly, he maintains this pure, bright, innocent face, but underneath there are all these horrible things that people are whispering about him.
And society lets him get away with it, largely. The novel makes that biting comment that Victorian society values manners more than morals.
Right, and that having the highest respectability is less valuable than the possession of a good chef.
Yeah.
A pretty sharp critique of social hypocrisy.
So Dorian maintains his place, despite the darkness swirling around him.
But internally, he descends further. He reaches a point where he finds ugliness, the one reality. He starts seeking oblivion in darker places, like opium dens.
Trying to erase the past.
Trying to destroy the memory of old sins could be destroyed by the madness of sins that were new. Just digging himself deeper.
Even his one attempt at doing good feels off. Sparing the village girl, Hetty Merton.
Yeah, he presents it as a moment of redemption, but Lord Henry immediately dismisses it.
Calls it vanity. Or maybe just a craving for a new sensation. Or even just acting a part.
Exactly. And the portrait confirms Henry's cynicism. It doesn't become beautiful again. Instead, it shows a new flaw, a look of cunning, the curved wrinkle of the hypocrite.
So no easy redemption there. True change has to be deeper.
Which really brings us to some of the core themes Wilde is wrestling with here, like heredity versus free will.
Yes. The introduction points out that Wilde added details about Dorian's ancestry in the 1891 version, Chapter 3, right?
That's the one, linking Dorian's bad behavior back to a disreputable grandfather, a mean dog.
And the narrator even comments at one point that people in extreme situations lose the freedom of their will. They move to their terrible end as automatons move.
It taps right into those contemporary Victorian debates about responsibility and mental disease, about whether criminality could be inherited, a result of degenerate ancestry.
So it adds this almost scientific layer, suggesting Dorian might be partly predestined for his fate, diminishing his purely moral responsibility, perhaps.
It certainly complicates it. It raises the question, how much is choice and how much is biological destiny? A very modern feeling debate, actually.
And then there's the whole theme of influence, which seems to be everywhere.
Pervasive. You have Lord Henry's intellectual influence over Dorian. You have Dorian's own fatal influence over others like Sybil Vane and Alan Campbell.
You have the influence of heredity we just mentioned, and even the influence of a book.
That poisonous book, the yellow-backed French novel Lord Henry gives him, which fascinated Dorian and becomes his template for living this life of sensation.
But then the irony. Lord Henry himself later denies that art or books have any real influence on action.
He does. He claims art has no influence upon action. It annihilates the desire to act. It is superbly sterile.
Which is such a Wildean paradox. He's directly refuting the very critics who called his novel poisonous and claimed it would corrupt readers.
It's a brilliant, self-aware moment. He's playing with the very arguments used against him.
And finally, there's that tension between art and life starkly shown through Sybil Vane.
The actress, Dorian, falls for her because she's an artist, because she embodies different characters brilliantly. Tonight, she is Imogen, and tomorrow night, she will be Juliet.
And Lord Henry asks that pointed question. When is she Sybil Vane? Dorian's answer. Never. He loves the illusion, the artifice.
But when Sybil falls genuinely in love with Dorian, with the real man, her art suffers. She says she can't act anymore because she's experienced reality.
And Dorian's reaction is brutal. He rejects her because her art is gone. Her real passion destroys the illusion he loved,
Leading to her dismissal and suicide. And again, Lord Henry's cold analysis comes in that she was less real than Shakespeare's characters, that she never really lived.
which, as you said, seems to be Wilde instructing the reader. View this aesthetically, not sentimentally. Separate the art from the messy reality.
It's a challenging stance. It forces you to think about art's purpose. Can it, or should it, be separated from human feeling, from morality? Wilde doesn't give an easy answer.
So wrapping this all up, what should you, the listener, take away from this deep dive? The Picture of Dorian Gray is so much more than just a cool, creepy story about a magic painting.
Absolutely. It's a profound look at identity, the real cost of eternal youth and unchecked desire, and that constant battle between how we seem and who we are.
Wilde uses this fantastic setup to explore really serious Victorian anxieties about science, heredity, morality, the role of art itself in a world that was changing incredibly fast.
And the fact that it could provoke such strong reactions then and still fascinates us now shows just how timeless those questions are.
We have a final thought for you, something to mull over, inspired by the novel's ending.
The introduction offers this interpretation. If Dorian Gray does have a moral, we can perhaps find it in its final paragraph. The work of art, which has been subjected to hostile moral readings, shamed obscurity, and finally physical harm, remains intact in all its beauty and wonder.
Think about that. After everything, the sin, the scandal, the murder, Dorian's own destruction, the portrait is found, restored to its original perfect beauty. The art endures.
So what does that suggest? Does beauty, does art itself have a kind of purity or power that outlasts the corrupted human soul connected to it?
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In the end, which truly endures? The beautiful object or the moral life? Something to think about.